The Citadel Prime Neutral Space Station glimmered against the backdrop of the Serpentis Nebula, its crystalline spires and reinforced diplomatic chambers hosting representatives from 27 different species. The Fifth Intergalactic Security Summit was well underway, with the primary agenda being the division of newly discovered resource zones in the nebula's outer reaches. Ambassador Arthur Vance of Earth straightened his formal attire as he observed the gathering. At 63, he carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who had navigated complex international relations long before humanity reached the stars. His silver hair and measured movements suggested patience and wisdom, though the sharp intelligence in his gray eyes betrayed an analytical mind constantly at work. Latest update on Xylar positioning, whispered Lena Petrova, Earth's chief data analyst. The tall Russian woman discreetly slid a data tablet toward Vance. At 35, Petrova had risen through diplomatic intelligence ranks by combining pattern recognition algorithms with psychological profiling to unprecedented effectiveness. They've shifted their proposal again, Vance noted, scanning the information. Third time in 2 days. They're testing our response patterns, confirmed Marcus Jones, the embassy's security chief. The former Special Forces commander maintained a relaxed posture that belied his constant vigilance. The Thrak delegation has been requesting unusual amounts of information about our supply chains. Vance gave a slight nod. As expected, Earth had joined the galactic community just 50 years ago, after the discovery of their planet by a Thrak mining scout. Despite rapid adaptation to extraterrestrial technologies and protocols, humanity remained viewed as latecomers by most established powers. Their military capabilities and space travel technologies lagged significantly behind powerhouses like the Xylar Alliance, warrior species with rigid honor codes dating back millennia, and the Thrak Consortium, pragmatic traders whose economic network spanned 3 galactic arms. Vance had spent his 15 years as Earth's ambassador carefully cultivating an image of helpful humility. Earth representatives offered technical innovations where they could, provided cultural exchange opportunities, and generally avoided confrontation with the established powers. This approach had secured humanity a place at the table, barely. Grand Knight Theron of the Xylar Alliance entered the chamber, his ceremonial armor gleaming under the artificial lights. Standing nearly 7 feet tall, with pale blue skin stretched over a muscular frame, Theron embodied the warrior ethos of his people. His face, marked with the ritual scars of 17 major battles, remained perpetually stern when addressing Earth representatives. The Security Council session will commence, announced the Arbiter, a member of the ancient Medullan species who traditionally presided over such gatherings due to their reputation for absolute neutrality. As delegates moved toward the central chamber, Theron deliberately stepped into Vance's path. Ambassador, the Xylar said, his translator conveying his deep voice with mechanical precision. I trust Earth has reviewed the latest security projections for the Serpentis region. We have, Grand Knight, Vance replied evenly. Our analysis suggests collaborative patrols would be most effective. Theron's upper mouth flaps twitched in what humans had learned was a gesture of dismissal. An interesting perspective from a species whose largest vessel would barely qualify as a scout ship in our fleet. Different perspectives often reveal overlooked solutions, Vance offered diplomatically. Indeed, Theron responded without warmth. We shall see what solutions emerge today. The central chamber featured a circular table with designated seating arranged by coalition and security treaty status. Earth's position, between 2 minor powers and far from the central decision-makers, reflected their current standing. Vance took his place without comment, though he noticed Petrova's slight frown at the arrangement. We addressed the matter of the Serpentis Nebula security arrangements, the Arbiter began. The discovery of transuranic deposits in the Helios sector has escalated this from a routine border matter to one requiring comprehensive security protocols. Displays activated above the table, showing 3-dimensional maps of the nebula with highlighted resource zones and proposed patrol routes. The Xylar Alliance proposes primary responsibility for the security corridor, Theron stated, manipulating the display to show a formation of Xylar warships positioned strategically throughout the resource-rich areas. Our battle cruisers can ensure no unauthorized mining occurs. The Thrak Consortium will, of course, provide logistical support and market stabilization, added the Thrak representative, a diminutive figure whose species communicated through color patterns that rippled across their translucent skin. The translator converted these into a smooth, businesslike voice. Our economic forecasts suggest a 32% increase in regional prosperity under joint Xylar-K Thrak administration. Vance listened as smaller powers offered token contributions or requested concessions. The carefully choreographed dance of power was proceeding exactly as expected. Earth would be granted minimal resources and expected to express gratitude for being included at all. When Earth's turn to speak arrived, Vance proposed a modest but innovative patrol system involving smaller, faster vessels working in coordination patterns developed from Earth naval tactics. While our ships may not match Xylar firepower, he explained, they offer maneuverability advantages in the nebula's particle-dense regions. Our simulations suggest a 22% improvement in coverage efficiency. Theron barely waited for Vance to finish before responding. While Earth's creative approach is noted, security in contested space requires proven deterrent capabilities. His tone carried thinly veiled condescension. The nebula's radiation patterns would interfere with your proposed coordination systems, leaving gaps that pirates or unauthorized miners would quickly exploit. Our analysis of the radiation patterns suggests, Vance began. Your analysis is based on limited experience, Theron interrupted. The Xylar have defended nebula territories for 9,000 years, Ambassador. With respect, Earth barely understood stellar formation when my ancestors were already establishing the security protocols still used today. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably at the blatant dismissal, but none spoke up. The Thrak representative's skin flickered with patterns that the human delegation's software translated as approximate to amusement. Perhaps, Theron continued, his voice taking on a tone of false generosity, Earth would be better suited to provide logistical and medical support for our patrols. Your species has shown aptitude for supply management, and this would be a valuable contribution more aligned with your capabilities. The message was unmistakable. Earth was being relegated to a supporting role, denied any meaningful security presence or resource claims. It was a diplomatic slap, calculated to reinforce humanity's junior status without being overtly hostile enough to justify formal protest. Vance maintained his composed expression, but he felt a familiar tension. For 15 years, he had advocated patience within the Earth Diplomatic Corps. Build relationships. Learn the systems. Don't antagonize the established powers. That approach had secured humanity a foothold, but increasingly, it seemed to be cementing their subordinate status rather than advancing their position. He caught Petrova's eye. A nearly imperceptible nod passed between them. They had discussed this possibility. The data analyst placed her hand briefly against her earpiece, sending a prearranged signal to the secure systems aboard their ship. Jones straightened slightly in his chair, recognizing the subtle shift in diplomatic posture. I request permission to respond, Vance said calmly. The Arbiter, noting the tension, nodded. The chamber recognizes Ambassador Vance. Vance stood slowly, straightening his formal attire with deliberate movements. When he spoke, his voice carried the same measured, almost casual tone he typically employed. I wish to thank Grand Knight Theron for his concern regarding Earth's capabilities, he began. His assessment of our naval strength is, of course, accurate. Earth's fleet is indeed modest compared to the Xylar Armada or Thrak Merchant Marine. He paused, allowing a small smile to form. However, I feel I should clarify a fundamental aspect of human security doctrine that may not be fully appreciated by this assembly. Theron's posture remained rigid, clearly expecting another meek acceptance of Earth's limitations. Humanity's strength has never primarily resided in the size of our fleets or the power of our weapons, Vance continued conversationally. Throughout our rather turbulent planetary history, Our greatest security asset has always been our capacity for analysis, prediction, and preparation. He gestured casually toward Petrova. As part of standard risk assessment protocols, based on our rich historical experience, Earth maintains detailed interaction outcome analyses for all known species, including, of course, comprehensive contingency plans for undesirable scenarios. The chamber grew noticeably quieter. Several translators had to repeat the statement, as if their operators were uncertain they had heard correctly. These analyses are quite thorough, Vance continued, his tone still remarkably casual. For instance, our assessment of Xylar ritualistic combat doctrine reveals interesting vulnerabilities when faced with asymmetric response patterns. Similarly, our economic models regarding Thrak's supply chain vulnerabilities have proven quite illuminating, particularly regarding dependency ratios in the Orion spur networks. Complete silence fell over the chamber. Theron had gone completely still, his ceremonial armor suddenly seeming rigid. The Thrak representative's skin had shifted to a uniform pale gray, a reaction the humans had rarely observed. Other delegates were exchanging glances of confusion or alarm. Lena Petrova kept her expression neutral as she monitored the encrypted communications suddenly flooding the diplomatic channels. Multiple high-level security signals were being transmitted between delegations. Marcus Jones noted with professional interest how security teams from other species had subtly shifted to higher alert postures, hands closer to concealed weapons or communication devices. Ambassador Vance, Theron finally spoke, his voice carrying an undercurrent of barely contained fury. You appear to be making unsupported threats against established powers in a Security Council meeting. Not at all, Grand Knight, Vance replied mildly. I'm simply offering transparency about Earth's security approach. No threats whatsoever, merely clarification about our analytical methods. You have directly implied possession of targeted countermeasures against sovereign powers, the Thrak representative interjected, skin now pulsing with rapid patterns. On what basis have these analyses been conducted? The Arbiter raised a long-fingered hand for order. This unexpected disclosure requires clarification. Ambassador Vance, the Council requests elaboration on the nature and purpose of these contingency plans. Vance nodded respectfully to the Arbiter. Of course. To be absolutely clear, these are not offensive strategies but defensive preparations. Humanity's history is marked by conflicts that erupted from miscalculation and unpreparedness. We have learned, sometimes at terrible cost, that security comes from anticipating all possible scenarios, however unlikely. You claim to have developed countermeasures against allies without provocation, Theron insisted, ceremonial armor creaking as he leaned forward. This is a violation of trust and possibly of multiple security treaties. With respect, Grand Knight, Vance responded, his tone hardening slightly for the first time. Earth has signed mutual defense agreements, not subordination pacts. No treaty prohibits analysis of publicly available information or preparation for contingencies. And as you have correctly observed, Earth possesses limited conventional military capacity. Our security necessarily relies on other forms of deterrence. The Thrak representative's translator conveyed their demand. What specific intelligence gathering methods have been employed to develop these alleged analyses? Vance spread his hands in a gesture of openness. I cannot disclose classified methodologies in this forum. However, I would be willing to arrange a secure information exchange to verify certain findings, if that would alleviate concerns. Before either Theron or the Thrak could respond, Vance continued. For instance, our analysis noted the interesting outcomes of the Xylar battle simulation conducted in the Deneb sector last cycle, the one that tested responses to multi-vector drone swarms and resulted in a 72% failure rate in primary shield harmonics. Theron's face darkened to a deep blue, a sign of intense emotion among his species. The simulation Vance mentioned had been classified at the highest level, its disappointing results known to only a handful of Xylar military commanders. Turning slightly, Vance addressed the Thrak representative. Similarly, our economic forecasting models identified the logical inconsistency in the primary CTHRAC market prediction algorithm, specifically in how it processes quantum fluctuation data from boundary regions. It's creating a 0.3% compounding error that will become significant within 3 trading cycles. The CTHRAC skin displayed a pattern that the translation software couldn't fully interpret, but which approximated to extreme alarm. That particular flaw had only been discovered by their own analysts 2 cycles ago and was being secretly addressed. "I request an immediate recess," Theron demanded, no longer bothering to conceal his agitation. "The Xyler delegation requires internal consultation regarding these disclosures." The CTHRAC consortium seconds this request, their representative added immediately. The arbiter, clearly unsettled by the sudden tension, nodded. "The council will recess for 3 standard hours. All delegations are reminded of the Citadel Prime neutrality protocols." As the chamber emptied, delegates from smaller powers cast fascinated glances at the Earth team. The humans maintained their composed demeanor until they reached their private quarters in the diplomatic wing. Once the security sweep confirmed no surveillance, Marcus Jones exhaled loudly. "Well, that cat's out of the bag." Spectacularly, I might add. Lena Petrova was already reviewing data streams on multiple screens. Xyler and CTHRAC systems are conducting wide-spectrum security sweeps. Their intelligence branches have elevated to maximum alert status. Several minor powers are requesting emergency consultations with their governments. "And our communications?" Vance asked, removing his formal jacket. Seeing a 300% increase in attempted penetration, Jones reported. "Nothing our countermeasures can't handle, but they're definitely trying to assess our capabilities more aggressively." Vance nodded, pouring himself a small measure of water. "Reactions within expected parameters, then?" "Was that wise, Arthur?" Jones asked, using the ambassador's first name now that they were in private. "We've essentially announced to the galaxy's major powers that we've been analyzing their weaknesses." "We announced what they already suspected," Vance corrected. "The difference is acknowledging it openly, from a position of calculated revelation rather than defensive exposure." Petrova smiled slightly. "The timing was perfect. We've been gathering this intelligence for decades, but treating it like a shameful secret. Meanwhile, every major power has been doing exactly the same thing to us. The difference," Vance noted, "is that they expected us to play by implicit rules. Be grateful for inclusion. Don't rock the established order. Our continued deference was being read as weakness, not wisdom." The Xyler simulation detail was particularly effective, Petrova observed. "Highly specific, recently classified, and extracted purely from open-source analysis of their fleet movements combined with our modeling algorithms. Not a single classified source compromised. And the CTHRAC algorithm flaw?" Jones asked. "Discovered through predictive mathematical modeling based on public market data," Petrova confirmed. "Again, no improper intelligence gathering required. We simply look more deeply at available information than most species expect." Vance gazed out the viewport at the nebula. "The key was never to prove we had infiltrated their systems, only to demonstrate that our analytical capacity is sufficiently advanced to be concerning, to force a complete reassessment of Earth's position. They'll be checking for human agents, moles, surveillance devices," Jones predicted. "Let them," Vance replied. "They won't find any because that's not how we obtain the information. The beauty of big data analysis, psychological modeling, and perhaps a few untraceable network probes is deniability." "What happens after the recess?" Petrova asked. "They have 3 options," Vance said. "Openly confront us, which would reveal their own vulnerabilities. Ignore the disclosure, which would show weakness. Or recalibrate their approach to Earth based on this new understanding." "I'm betting on door number 3, Jones said. "As am I," Vance agreed. "Prepare the cooperation proposals. It's time for Phase 2. 3 hours later, the Earth delegation returned to the council chamber. The atmosphere had noticeably shifted. Security personnel from all delegations maintained a heightened presence. Theron and the Kthrak representative had returned, but their postures had subtly changed. Theron, while still projecting dignity, had lost some of his dismissive confidence. The Kthrak's skin displayed more subdued patterns, their gestures more measured. As the session resumed, Theron addressed the chamber first. His words were carefully chosen. During the recess, the Xylar Alliance has considered Ambassador Vance's statements regarding Earth's security protocols, he stated formally. While we find the approach unusual, we recognize each sovereign power's right to defensive preparation. He turned directly to Vance, his expression stern but no longer dismissive. However, we request formal assurance that these analyses will not be utilized for hostile purposes against allied powers. The Kthrak representative followed immediately. The consortium similarly requests establishment of secure communication channels to discuss mutual data security concerns. Vance nodded respectfully to both speakers. The shift in their language was subtle but significant. They were now addressing Earth as a potential threat rather than an inconsequential junior partner. It wasn't friendship, but it was respect, and in galactic politics, respect was the foundation of meaningful negotiation. Earth is pleased to provide such assurances, Vance replied. Our analyses are defensive in nature, designed to prevent miscalculation and conflict, not to enable it. At his signal, Petrova activated a presentation display. In fact, I'd like to clarify the philosophy behind our approach, which may be unfamiliar to some delegates. The display showed a simplified timeline of human history, highlighting major conflicts and technological developments. Humanity's path to unified planetary government was neither smooth nor peaceful, Vance explained. Our single planet experienced 2 global wars within the span of 30 years, followed by a decades-long Cold War between nuclear-armed powers that nearly resulted in planetary extinction on multiple occasions. The display showed conflict zones, casualty figures, and the exponential growth of weapons technologies. Unlike species that evolved with awareness of others, Vance continued, humanity developed in isolation, competing viciously for resources and territory among ourselves. This created a unique evolutionary pressure: adapt, innovate, and predict your opponents or perish. He gestured to a section showing intelligence agencies and defense doctrines. For humans, information and predictive capability became our greatest weapons. During our Cold War, physical conflict was largely replaced by information warfare, proxy engagement, and deterrence through mutual vulnerability assessment. Petrova smoothly transitioned the display to show Earth's approach to galactic relations: intricate network analyses, pattern recognition algorithms, simulation models. When we encountered the galactic community, we applied these same principles. Not because we sought confrontation, but because comprehensive analysis is so deeply embedded in our security culture that we can imagine no other approach. Vance's tone remained conversational, but his words carried weight. For humanity, information and predictability have always been our most potent defense. We don't need the largest fleet if we understand precisely where vulnerabilities exist and how to prevent conflict before it begins. The chamber had grown attentive. Even species that had previously paid little attention to Earth's representatives were now focused on Vance's presentation. I wish to be absolutely clear, Vance emphasized. These analyses are not aimed at finding weaknesses to exploit, but at identifying potential friction points to avoid. The most successful contingency plan, from Earth's perspective, is one that never needs implementation. As the initial tension began to dissipate, Vance signaled Petrova again. The display shifted to show detailed cooperation proposals, each tailored specifically to different species based on Earth's comprehensive analyses. For instance, our study of Xylar fleet logistics identified opportunities to implement Earth's supply chain optimization models, potentially increasing combat readiness by 18% without additional resource allocation. Theron's expression remained guarded, but his attention was clearly captured by the specificity of the proposal. Similarly, Our analysis of Cthulhu market behaviors suggests a potential research partnership on crystalline materials found on Earth that could provide unique conductive properties beneficial to Cthulhu trading network efficiency. The Cthulhu's skin displayed patterns suggesting intense interest. Vance continued presenting collaboration opportunities for several other species, each proposal remarkably specific to their needs and capabilities. Needs and capabilities that Earth had apparently studied in considerable depth. We analyzed to understand, Vance concluded, and in understanding, we see both risks and opportunities for cooperation. We will always prioritize the latter. A representative from one of the smaller powers, the avian Tellurians, spoke up. This approach is most unusual. You prepare for conflict while designing cooperation. It is the human way, Vance acknowledged with a slight smile. A paradox we've never fully resolved ourselves. As the session progressed into policy discussions, the entire dynamic had shifted. Theron no longer dismissed Earth's proposals outright, but engaged with them critically. The Cthulhu representative initiated direct consultation with Petrova regarding several technical points. Smaller powers began to approach the Earth delegation during breaks, seeking insights or offering potential exchanges. When the Serpentis security arrangements came up for final proposal, the results reflected the new reality. Earth was granted a significant patrol sector, smaller than the Xylar zone, but strategically valuable. The resource allocation included access to a transuranic-rich asteroid cluster that would significantly boost Earth's industrial capacity. Most importantly, Earth representatives were included in the joint command structure that would oversee the entire operation. As the summit concluded 3 days later, the Earth delegation prepared to depart Citadel Prime. Aboard their vessel, Vance, Petrova, and Jones gathered in the secure conference room for a final assessment. Mission parameters exceeded, Petrova announced, reviewing the agreements. Resource access increased 42% above baseline projection. Security responsibilities expanded to include actual patrol authority rather than support functions only. 7 new bilateral technology exchange agreements initiated. The risk was considerable, Jones noted. If they had called our bluff. It wasn't entirely a bluff, Vance reminded him. Our analyses are real, even if we deliberately implied greater specificity than we possess in some areas. And the long-term implications? Petrova asked. Vance gazed at the nebula through the view screen as their ship moved away from the station. Earth is no longer positioned as the grateful newcomer. We've established ourselves as a known unknown, a power whose full capabilities remain uncertain but whose analytical reach has been demonstrated. They'll be watching us much more carefully now, Jones observed. Good, Vance replied. Attention is influence. For 50 years, we've been too easily ignored or dismissed. That ends today. Petrova nodded. The Xylar will respect strength and calculation. The Cthulhu will see opportunity in our analytical capabilities. The smaller powers will seek alignment with a rising influence. And when they discover the limits of our intelligence gathering, Jones asked, by then, the recalibration will be complete, Vance said. The perception shift is what matters. They'll never again make the mistake of underestimating humanity's capacity for understanding and preparing for all contingencies. He turned from the view screen to face his colleagues. Besides, we've offered them exactly what they need: better logistics for Xylar, new materials for Cthulhu, specialized technologies for others. They'll accept because it's in their interest to do so, and in the process, Earth's position strengthens. Peace through preparation, Petrova said with a slight smile. Cooperation based on genuine respect. A very human approach, Vance agreed. Our history taught us that the best way to avoid being a victim is to be thoroughly prepared for all possibilities, while actively working to ensure the worst possibilities never materialize. As Citadel Prime diminished behind them, Vance considered how a single, casual disclosure had fundamentally altered humanity's trajectory in galactic politics. The path ahead remained challenging. Earth was still developing its technologies and expanding its influence. But now they had a genuine voice in the decisions that would shape the future. Preparation, analytical capability, and calculated risk-taking, traits forged in Earth's complex and often violent history, had proven to be humanity's greatest assets among the stars. Not overwhelming force or economic dominance, but the depth of understanding and the will to use that understanding strategically. Set course for Earth, Vance instructed. We have much to prepare for the next summit. As the ship's engines engaged for the jump to faster-than-light travel, Vance allowed himself a small smile. Sometimes, the most effective diplomatic tool was simply letting others know exactly how much you understood about them, and leaving them to wonder about all the rest.